On June 17, 1944, on Saipan's southern ridges near Nafutan Point, men of the Imperial Japanese Army freeze where they crouch. Helmets tilt upward, fingers tighten on rifles that are already slick with sweat. The voice repeats itself through a loudspeaker mounted on a U.S. Army truck hidden beyond the palm line. It speaks of food, of water, of safety. It names units, it uses ranks, it pauses at the right places, as if the speaker understands how a Japanese sentence breathes. For weeks, these soldiers have been told that Americans howl like animals, that they mutilate prisoners, that surrender means torture followed by public humiliation and death. Now the enemy is offering instructions: where to walk, how to raise hands, how not to be shot. Spoken in polite, neutral Japanese. No threats, no insults. Paper follows the voice. Leaflets flutter down later that morning, dropped from aircraft circling high above the island. They do not explode, they do not burn. They drift, white against the volcanic soil, catching in bushes and foxholes. Some land face down. Others show printed Japanese characters so precise they look like something torn from a school book. One leaflet lists the names of Japanese units already destroyed on Saipan. Another shows a map marking where U.S. lines actually are, not where Tokyo Radio says they are. A third explains how to surrender safely, step by step, including what to do if the soldier is wounded and cannot walk. The shock is not fear at first, it is confusion. On June 19, 1944, aboard destroyers screening Task Force 58, U.S. Navy intelligence officers note intercepted Japanese communications reacting not to bombs or naval gunfire, but to the leaflets. The reports describe soldiers asking whether the messages are a trick, whether reading them is already an act of betrayal. Some units order the papers burned. Others collect them and bury them. A few officers tear them up personally, their hands shaking more than they would under shell fire. At night, the loudspeakers return. They speak from hidden positions near the front lines, sometimes mounted on tanks, sometimes carried forward by psychological warfare teams under guard. The speakers crackle, the batteries whine. Then the voice resumes, careful not to sound triumphant. It says, "You have been fighting bravely. Your situation is known. Your families will not be punished if you surrender." That sentence lands like a blow. From 1941 onward, Japanese soldiers have been drilled in one certainty: capture brings shame, not only on the individual, but on parents, siblings, children not yet born. Military manuals state it plainly. Training officers reinforce it with stories of families harassed by police, of names erased from village records. The idea that an enemy would explicitly say otherwise, and do so calmly, without mockery, forces a reckoning no bayonet charge ever could. On Okinawa in April 1945, U.S. Marines advancing inland from Hagushi beaches find leaflets tucked into tunics, folded small enough to hide under bandages. Some are stained with blood. Some have notes scribbled in the margins: times, names, prayers. A Marine corporal from the 96th Infantry Division later recalls finding one in the hand of a dead Japanese soldier near Kakuzu Ridge. The man's fingers were stiff, still pinching the paper. He'd been killed by artillery hours after the leaflet drop. He never surrendered, but he had read it. The loudspeakers there speak at night when exhaustion strips away bravado. They call out to individual units by name using intelligence gathered from captured documents. They mention specific hills already taken, roads already cut. They describe the sounds Japanese soldiers can already hear, the artillery, the tanks, and explain what those sounds mean tactically. The psychological impact comes from accuracy. These messages are not grand speeches. They do not condemn the emperor. They do not praise democracy. They are practical. They are precise. They treat the listener as someone capable of deciding. That, more than anything, is destabilizing. On Iwo Jima in February 1945, most Japanese defenders do not surrender. But even there, in tunnels carved beneath Mount Surubachi, loudspeaker messages echo faintly through the rock. Some soldiers press their ears to the walls to hear better. Others cover their ears and shout patriotic slogans to drown the sound out. A few argue in whispers about whether the voice might be telling the truth. The arguments are new. Doubt itself is the intrusion. Leaflets promise medical care. They show photographs of Japanese prisoners being treated by U.S. Navy doctors, bandaged, sitting upright, alive. The images look staged. The faces look wrong, too calm, too intact. That wrongness gnaws. Captured soldiers later described the moment they realized the enemy had invested time in learning their language, not as propaganda, but as preparation. Someone had studied how to speak to them. Someone had anticipated their fears. That realization cuts deeper than the weapons. In April 1945, a Japanese private captured near Shuri describes hearing his own hometown named over a loudspeaker. He is certain it must be coincidence. Later, during interrogation, he learns it was not. The Americans had maps, records, names. Not omniscience, but enough to break the illusion that surrender meant vanishing into a void. The leaflets do not end the fighting. They do not empty caves overnight, but they linger. Men carry them as talismans, as forbidden texts. Some use them to wrap wounds. Some hide them in their boots. Some tear them up and throw the pieces away, then fish them back out of the mud hours later, ashamed of their own hesitation. The shock is cumulative. It comes from realizing that the enemy is not behaving according to the rules that were taught, that the expected cruelty has been replaced with something quieter, more unsettling, an offer that assumes a future. For soldiers conditioned to believe that death is the only honorable conclusion, the suggestion of survival, spoken in their own language, repeated patiently, accompanied by printed instructions, is not comforting. It is disorienting. It forces a question that doctrine was designed to prevent. If this is possible, what else might be? Long after the battle's end, Japanese veterans remember not the exact words, but the tone, the lack of urgency, the absence of rage, the way the voice waited, as if time itself had shifted sides. The loudspeakers did not shout victory. They spoke as if the war's outcome was already decided, and as if the listener still mattered. That assumption, drifting through the dark on Saipan, Okinawa, Iwo Jima, is what struck hardest. Not the volume, not the paper, but the moment a soldier realized the enemy was addressing him not as a fanatic or a target, but as a man who might live past tomorrow.